the absolute key issue, Nima, which is it's the theme of my next column, which is going to be published in the Cradle probably tomorrow. Already sent it, but it takes a while for them because they had to translate it into Turkish and Arabic. So it takes a while, so it's published usually the next day. Is this lethal blow against the petro-yuan? And that's what driving not only Neo-Caligula or Neo-Crassus, but the sycophants around him, and especially the American elites in the background who gave the go-ahead for this war. Because if this goes on for an extra few weeks, this is the beginning of the end of the petrodollar. And that means is the beginning of the end of unilateral hegemonic empire ruling over virtually most of the planet. And that's where we are now. Some people, at least in the US, are realizing how big the stakes are. And there's no turning back. And this is what we hear from the Iranians day after day. Even if Trump would, even if, which we know it's not going to happen, he's a prisoner in the labyrinths of his own hubris. So he cannot back down. He cannot confess that he lost his bet. Even if he would say in the next few days, obviously in one of those interminable rambling posts, okay, we won. We won, we decimated everything, their air force, their navy, we were decimating Iran, So I proclaimed victory and that's it. That's the end. This would not be the end because Iran would continue. And all the US interests in Israel, Israel itself, and all across West Asia would continue to be attacked by Iran. So there will be no ceasefire. And now Arakshi is saying it bluntly, no ceasefire. So everybody with an IQ of 10 can understand the Iranian position. So there's no way out for him. And that's the problem, Nima. He's going to get even more dangerous than he already is.
Yeah. Pepe, you mentioned something so important, in my opinion, that is the shift from petrodollar to petro-yuan. It's a financial nuclear move, I would assume. It's not something so small to be ignored. It's huge what is going on. What is the outcome of that? How do you see because for many years we were talking about, I think on my side, my understanding that if the United States wants something, a strategic partner in the Middle East, in the West Asia, that would be Iran, for example, before. But that was not the American agenda because the foreign policy of America, of the United States, is run by Israelis, is run by Netanyahu and in Israel. That's why I think we are far away. We can ignore that. The United States is not going to change its attitude. It's going to great length to destroy Iran and break down Iran in provinces. And you see a new partnership coming out of the conflicts, both in Ukraine and in the Middle East. A new, this is a partnership. It goes beyond alliance, Pepe. It's not something as we saw with the G7 or with NATO. It's something different. It is of different nature. And how do you understand this sort of partnership that is shaping? I think it's strengthening.
This is what I explained briefly in this column. This may be, let's say, a pre-column to a much deeper essay later on as the war progresses, of course. But the key, in fact, one of the key items which I had to re-stress, all over again, is how the petrodollar is an absolutely massive scam that the Americans thought would be forever. Since the deal was struck, the deal was imposed on the Arabs in 1974 after the oil shock of 1973. It's a very simple scam, but immensely effective for the hegemonic power. So they forced the GCC and OPEC, and that continued since 1974. You have to buy, you can only trade your oil and gas in US dollars. That's it. Nothing else is allowed. Thus, the name petrodollar. And you invest all your profits, all your surpluses in the American economy. You can buy US Treasury bonds, you can buy stocks. Nowadays, especially, you can finance our tech, our big tech investments in the US. So they have all that tsunami of funds coming from the GCC countries into the American economy. That props up the dollar. So it keeps the dollar as the reserve currency for the whole planet. That finances the industrial military complex. Very, very important. These forever wars, now being theoretically supervised by the Secretary of Forever Wars, the push-up clown, the Zionist Christian, they are financed by the GCC essentially and other OPEC contributors. And of course, the most important thing, all this tsunami of cash bails out the US from paying their unpayable debt, which is now $40 trillion. So it's a beautiful mafia style scheme. It has been working almost like clockwork since 1974. So what do we have now? That's the beauty of the whole thing, because it's also very, very simple. Iran, with one move, and this one, that's why I say it's financially nuclear. Iran didn't need a nuclear bomb of thousands of Khorramshahr 4 missiles to change the rules of the game vis-a-vis the petrodollar, just like that.
This is the inflection point that nobody saw coming. The 2026 Iran war was supposed to be about nuclear weapons, about preventing Tehran from crossing the nuclear threshold, about demonstrating that American and Israeli military power could neutralize any threat in the Middle East. Instead, it had become about something far more fundamental: the vulnerability of the global energy system to a single geographic choke point. And that vulnerability, once exposed, could not be unexposed. Every oil trader, every shipping company, every central banker, every finance minister on the planet was now recalculating risk, not just for this crisis, but for the next one, and the one after that. The structural consequences were already visible. Saudi Arabia was pivoting to Yanbu. The UAE was pushing capacity to Fujairah. Oman was positioning itself as an alternative hub, but none of these alternatives could replace Hormuz. The deficit was estimated at 12 million barrels per day. The Red Sea route was vulnerable to Houthi attacks. Fujairah had already been hit by Iranian drones. The bitter lesson was that there was no true substitute for the Strait of Hormuz. Geography, as Napoleon observed, is destiny. And here's the question that fundamentally reshapes the global order. If one country, a country that's being bombed, whose leader has been assassinated, whose military infrastructure is being systematically destroyed, can hold 20% of the world's oil supply hostage, what does that tell us about the real distribution of power in the 21st century? What does it tell us about the limits of air superiority? About the gap between military dominance and strategic victory? About the difference between winning a war and winning the peace? The hawks in Washington and Tel Aviv had argued for years that Iran's military was a paper tiger, that a decisive blow would shatter the regime and the pieces would fall into America's lap. In purely kinetic terms, they weren't entirely wrong. The opening salvo of Operation Epic Fury was devastating. 900 strikes in 12 hours. The supreme leader killed. The IRGC command structure decapitated. On paper, it looked like a perfect game. But war is not played on paper. War is played in the real world, where a country with a 1,400-mile coastline and a navy designed for asymmetric warfare can turn a narrow strait into a killing zone, where drones that cost a fraction of a cruise missile can set oil storage facilities ablaze across 3 countries, where the economic shockwaves of a single choke point closure can do more damage to the attacker's interests than the attacker's bombs do to the defender's military. The Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s had already demonstrated this. Saddam bombed Karg relentlessly, and Iran rebuilt every time. Because when your lifeline is threatened, you fight with a ferocity that no amount of shock and awe can extinguish. In 2026, the dynamic had evolved. Iran wasn't just defending Karg, it was weaponizing the entire Gulf. Every tanker was a potential target. Every port was within drone range. The cost wasn't measured in military casualties. It was measured in dollars per barrel, in the price of gasoline at the pump in Kansas, in the cost of diesel in Stuttgart, in the price of LNG in Tokyo. Let me close the lens one more time and pull back to the widest possible angle. What we were witnessing in March 2026 wasn't just a war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. It was a stress test of the entire post-World War II energy architecture. The system of petrodollar recycling, OPEC production quotas, strategic petroleum reserves, and freedom of navigation guarantees that had kept the global economy functioning for 70 years was being tested to its breaking point. And it was breaking. The petrodollar system, the arrangement by which oil is priced in dollars and surplus petrodollars are recycled into U.S. Treasury bonds, had been under pressure for years. China's push for the petro-yuan, Russia's pivot to non-dollar trade, BRICS' exploration of alternative payment systems. De-dollarization was the buzzword of every emerging market think tank from Sao Paulo to Shanghai. But the Iran war didn't just pressure the system. It exposed its central vulnerability. The system depended on oil flowing freely through choke points that could be closed by a determined adversary with relatively modest military capabilities. The deeper historical irony was that America's own Carter Doctrine of 1980 had long identified this vulnerability. Any attempt to gain control of the Persian Gulf would be repelled by military force. The Fifth Fleet was stationed in Bahrain for precisely this purpose, and yet, when the moment came, the military force was there, but the oil was not flowing. The doctrine had prepared for an external threat, a Soviet invasion, an Iraqi expansion. It had not prepared for a country that didn't need to control the strait to deny it to everyone else. This is Pandora's box. Once opened, it cannot be closed.
And by the way, because this was discussed many times before, and I didn't speak about this earlier in the previous months because I didn't think it was appropriate. But after the 12-day war, many were saying, why did Iran accept a ceasefire? It could have just continued. The reason why Iran accepted the ceasefire, even though it was winning the war, and it didn't accept it on day one, it continued striking for like 3 or 4 days. I don't know exactly how long. And then it accepted a halt in hostilities. But the reason was that during the 12-day war, even though Iran gradually gained the upper hand and was winning, Iran knew that if the war continued, the United States would have an incentive to enter the war and bring in all these weapon systems that they brought. And Iran recognized that while they were doing well, relatively speaking, they had many shortcomings. Therefore, they decided to end the hostilities and prepare themselves for the big war. And so for the last 8-9 months, the Iranians have been working 24 hours a day. And now, even though the combined firepower is much bigger than from the enemy, is much greater than it was during the 12-day war, the number of launchers that have been destroyed are much lower. The number of martyrs in the military, much lower. And Iran was able to, this time around, remove its key assets from bases, and so most of these strikes were on empty buildings. So Iran had to prepare itself for something much bigger than the Israeli regime. The Israeli regime is not a threat to Iran. And if ever any strength that it has is given to it by the West, because they support this racism and ethno-supremacism. But the United States is a real threat. And so the 12-day war was an excellent opportunity for Iran to figure out what it has to do. And they've been preparing themselves, and now we see the success. So ultimately, there will have to be an end to this. But it will be in a way in which Iran feels that in the years to come, its people are safe. And its allies across the region, they get security. Those regimes that hosted U.S. bases, they're guilty. They have to compensate.
Local reports suggest Iran may be using painted decoy targets on the ground to trick Israeli forces and drain their firepower in the ongoing conflict. The IDF has declined to comment further on the controversy, fueling a heated online debate over whether the object hit was a real helicopter or an elaborate decoy. Analysts note that Israeli missiles can cost anywhere from tens of thousands to millions of dollars each, while these decoy paintings may only cost Iran a few dollars to produce. Some social media posts claim the strike was effectively wasted on a fake helicopter, even as thermal imaging and smoke patterns are cited by others to support the IDF's version of events. All this is unfolding a week after the US and Israel launched coordinated attacks on Iran, dramatically escalating tensions across the region. Iranian retaliation has continued, with Washington warning that missile and drone attacks from Tehran and its allies could surge dramatically if the war widens. In a separate but related viral moment, a video claiming to show US forces bombing drawings of Iranian jets has exploded across social media feeds. That clip has prompted speculation over whether Operation Epic Fury is wasting expensive ammunition on ghost targets instead of real aircraft. However, Grok, X's built-in AI assistant, has pointed out that Iran routinely uses low-tech painted decoys specifically to draw enemy fire away from its real assets. According to Newsweek, the viral video actually matches footage first posted by the Israel Defense Forces on June 16, 2025, during an earlier round of fighting. Defense analyst Babak Tagvai shared that original clip, explaining that the strikes hit full-scale mock-ups at Iranian airbases rather than operational fighter jets. So the so-called US strikes on Iran circulating now are in fact recycled images of an Israeli attack from June 16, carried out during the 12-day war last year.
Scott, we're going to go ahead and start right there because I think it's very much understood that, this is Israel's war. They have finally found a United States president that has, taken the bait and gone to war because of Israel. And my first question for you is that I think we've seen Israel really expecting a military dominance, but we're now seeing these missile strikes penetrating Israeli defenses and hitting key infrastructure. From a purely military perspective, are we witnessing Israel and the United States lose control of this escalation?
What we're witnessing is Israel and the United States losing a war, and losing decisively. The United States and Israel always had the ability to put bombs on target, to make things go boom. That was unquestioned. They have some of the finest technology in the world. It doesn't take a military genius to make things go boom. But what's clear now, we're at day 17 or something like that. The things that are going boom aren't doing what they're supposed to do, which means retarding or degrading, diminishing the Iranian capacity to wage war. The Iranians have been prepared for everything we're doing. They're one step ahead of us the entire time. I will wager money. I don't have much, but I'll wager money on the fact that we haven't destroyed anything of significance in Iran. We were telegraphing this war for some time now. When I was a weapons inspector in Iraq, it came on the aftermath of Desert Storm, and I fought in the Desert Storm. I played a role in the targeting and battle damage assessment. I know how we would, because I was the guy that did it. You'd examine the strike imagery and you'd see, does destruction criteria met? Do we have a hole in the corner of the building where we wanted a hole to be? Yes, we do. Do we have evidence of secondary blast? Yes, we do. And we checked it all off and said, we killed everything. And then as a weapons inspector, I went to Iraq and inspected all the buildings that we blew up during Desert Storm, saying that we destroyed it, only to find that there was nothing in those buildings. They had all been evacuated beforehand. And the Iraqis brought it back. And I was told by an Iraqi general, he said, Scott, Mr. Scott, they always like to call me Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, you Americans are really good at blowing up buildings. You're really good at it. And he said, and we're really good at pouring concrete. The difference is when you blew up a building, there's nothing in it. And when our concrete cures, we put the stuff back in and we're back in business. You didn't stop anything. And that's what's happening in Iran right now. if you think for a second that they left their high-value production equipment inside known production facilities after the United States was saying that there was a potential of war, we're moving aircraft carriers and we're moving airplanes in. If you think that's what happened, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. I'll give you a good rate, but you're still going to buy it because it belongs to me, because you'll believe anything. These are empty buildings. So we're not achieving the result. That means that Iran's recovery from this conflict will be much quicker than anybody believes. They just have to build buildings, but what's inside the buildings, the expensive stuff, is being preserved in one of over 120 different hide sites that they've constructed inside the mountains. The Firdos underground nuclear enrichment facility that Trump bombed during Operation Midnight Hammer in June originally wasn't designed to hold centrifuge cascades. It was a hide site. They just basically went and carved out inside a mountain, and they had these standby hide sites in case of a war where they would take material and hide it in there. It was one of, like I said, 120, and there are probably more that were constructed for this purpose, each one of which is linked to a facility that is linked to assigned trucks that are designed to grab this stuff and bring it to that facility. Maybe we know where one or two of these are, and we're collapsing tunnels. That's the catchphrase. We're collapsing tunnels. Okay, so we collapse a tunnel that has production equipment inside. Production equipment's still there. Someday the tunnel will be actually the production equipment. We're not doing what we think we're doing. We're definitely not stopping their ballistic missiles from being launched, because they're launching them every day to great effect. So this campaign that we designed is achieving nothing except establishing that we are war criminals. I mean, not only the assassination of Ali Khamenei on day one, first 6 missiles, that is murder, by the way. Well, you see, Scott, he's a legitimate command and control target, only if we have a legitimate war going on. Who declared war? Not Congress. They've punted on this one. The president, did he get the Security Council of the United Nations to pass a Chapter 7 resolution? And I know all the naysayers are, Scott, come on, it's the Constitution. I hate to educate Americans on the Constitution, because I'd like to believe that they are intimately familiar with it. But the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution says that when we sign a treaty, a president signs a treaty, and the Senate has ratified the treaty by more than 2/3, becomes the supreme law of the land. You may not like that. I don't care. It's the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, the supreme law of the land. That means that the United Nations Charter is the supreme law of the land, bound to us by the Constitution. And the Charter prohibits what we're doing right now. The only time we can go to war, according to the Charter, is if we were attacked by Iran. I'll get to that in a minute. Or if the Security Council deems that there is an imminent threat to international peace and security that can't be resolved through diplomatic intervention, they will authorize the use of military force. That's what we did during Desert Storm. We had authority from the United Nations to build a coalition to liberate Kuwait from Iraqi invaders. And we also had permission from Congress. They met 4 days, I think, before the bombing began, and passed a resolution saying we authorized the president to enforce Chapter 7, the Chapter 7 resolution. Here, the president has made some sort of weak claim about the necessity of preemption. The problem is he can't give his story straight, because he was told us from the very beginning that the Iranians were going to hit us. They were going to strike us first, and we had to strike them first. Well, the Pentagon went to Congress and said, that's not the truth. The Iranians were never going to attack us first. They were prepared to respond if we attacked them, but there was never an imminent threat of a preemptive Iranian attack. And so that argument falls apart. But even then, what is the threat? Nuclear. We hear that. J.D. Vance just said it in the White House. It's a nuclear threat, except we know that it isn't a nuclear threat. How? First of all, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, briefed the United States Congress last year and said there is no Iranian nuclear weapons program. She's the honcho, number one. There's nobody above her in the intelligence world. This is the consensus assessment of the community. And the president said, she's wrong. I'm getting my intelligence elsewhere, from Israel. And again, for all the Americans out there, that should get in your craw, because our intelligence said there is none. The Israeli intelligence said, and I will tell you, somebody who's followed Israeli intelligence for some time, we know that in 2004, the Israelis submitted fabricated documents to the International Atomic Energy Agency accusing the Iranians of having a nuclear weapons program. Forged. The Israelis forged them. They seem to believe that we forgot about that, because in 2018, they once again briefed President Trump on newly discovered documents. And when people like me went through them, we went, It's the same document you tried to sell us in 2004. You've just repackaged the lie. But this time they had a president who was willing to nod his head yes, so we got out of the Iran nuclear deal. But we know that there is no nuclear weapon program. We know that. How? Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have said so. Now, they thought they were condemning Iran because they said, well, the first thing the Iranians told us is that they have 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium hexafluoride. They were threatening us with the potential of a bomb. And I'm like, no. They were telling you that they don't have a bomb. You see, because that's the totality of the 60% enriched uranium that the IAEA said existed before the June bombing began. What they're saying is we haven't converted any of it. It's all here. All you have to do is send in inspectors to verify, and we're going to work with you to get those inspectors in. So the Iranians weren't saying we have a bomb or threatened a bomb. They were saying we can prove to you that there isn't a bomb. And they were able to do that. So if this process is taking place, you immediately do away with the imminent threat. There is no imminent threat. Negotiation, there is no legal justification for what we're doing in Iran today. This puts us on the same page with other nations. For instance, go to the Nuremberg trials. Justice Jackson, who was the lead prosecutor, accused the Nazis at Nuremberg trial of war of aggression. In fact, they were all charged with that, and several of them were hung by the neck until dead for the war of aggression. Why? Because a war of aggression is the supreme war crime. From the war of aggression, all other crimes take place. We have now committed an illegal war of aggression. We don't have Security Council authority. We don't have congressional authority. We don't have even moral authority. This is a pure act of aggression, which means, gosh, we're sort of on the same page with those awful people that were hung by the neck until they were dead in Nuremberg. That's not a book that we want the American name in. And yet that's where we are today. At least win the war. I mean, you're an American. At least win the war. Do that right. We're losing this war. Now, I'm pleased. I mean, I hate to say this because I don't wish harm on anything, but this is not a war we should be winning. This is a war that is destabilizing to the, he wanted to bring, one of the reasons why he's doing this is because Israel told him to do it. So right off the bat, we as Americans have to say, no, we don't work for Israel. Apparently we do. We take orders from Benjamin Netanyahu. We go to war on his behalf. But he also wanted to basically bring Iran's head with him to China. He was supposed to go to China next month. And he wanted to bring Venezuela head and Iran's head and throw it on the table in front of Xi Jinping and say, I am Donald Trump, the conqueror. You must kneel before me and quiver in fear. Well, Trump just said, I'm not going to China right now. We're going to delay it. It's going to be delayed a long time. Why? Because he would go there as a fool, an idiot, a loser. And the worst thing is, this was all predictable. Donald Trump can sit there and say, as he does now, no one ever thought they would close the Strait of Hormuz. He could say, no one ever thought they would strike American bases. He said that. We never thought they would strike American bases. He would say, we didn't think that their government would last. And we didn't think they had this many missiles and that to be able to fire this way. Well, that's just a straight up lie. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff briefed the president on the JCS assessment, which was that the Iranians will close the Strait of Hormuz, and there's nothing America can do about it. So we have to anticipate that closure. If you want to free that, then you got to mobilize around 150, 200,000 troops who have to come in and seize that. But without those troops and the ability to project that power forward, the Strait of Hormuz will be closed. He was also told that we're going to run out of defensive interceptors. And then we'll be defenseless in the face of Iranians who will not run out of missiles. They will hit every target, Israel, and all of our bases. He was told this by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was told everything. Now, today he's pretending I wasn't told anything. Where's Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, commissioned an intelligence assessment from the National Intelligence Council that said you won't achieve regime change. If you kill Ali Khamenei, all you do is rally the nation around, that there is no chance of regime change. She talked about the dangers to the global economy. Basically, everything that happened was told to the president before he made the decision, that we're going to lose this war, lose it decisively, that we lack the capacity to win this, that all of our goals and objectives are unachievable.
We are winning the war against Iran. They are going down. We are coming up, and it is only a matter of time before we win this thing. This whole thing about the Strait of Hormuz, don't even worry about that. It's open. So it's almost time. We better start chilling all those bottles of champagne and getting ready to pop the corks. I'm kidding, of course. That's what you would think if you listen to American senior leaders and big name people who go on, who know the administration. If you listen to them, that's what you would think. That is a little different from what's actually happening on the ground here today. And we have nobody better to talk to about this than our ever popular and favorite Larry the Shirt Johnson, former CIA analyst, author at Sonar21.com, son of the New American Revolution on Substack. And just incredibly experienced person, especially in this region. So we're going to tap into that today as well. Larry, welcome back as always.
Danny, always a privilege and an honor.
Well, listen, as I warned you about a little bit before we came on the air here, I'll now warn the audience here. We've got some cringeworthy sound bites to play today, but that's what they're saying. So we have to be honest. We're unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the truth. And even when it's cringeworthy, we're going to go there. But let's start off this morning because Pete Hegseth went again on to the lectern, along with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to give an update on the war. And here's what he said leading off.
And again, today will be the largest strike package yet, just like yesterday was. As I've said from day one, our capabilities continue to build. Iran's continue to degrade. We're hunting and striking death and destruction from above.
Well, you know, I can no longer see Pete Hegseth, especially when he's having that demonstrative. They're going down while we're going up. He's kind of this caricature. I can't see him without seeing Colin Jost now. Because on Saturday Night Live, Colin Jost plays the best Hegseth I've ever seen. And now I can't disaggregate them in my mind. But is he serious, or is this a Colin Jost lookalike? What do you think about his comments?
Well, I think he's preparing for his post-government career. He'll be a spokesman for erectile dysfunction ads. You know, we're getting bigger tomorrow, but bigger, always bigger. You know, it's just, you know what? Size doesn't matter. What matters is, are you actually incapacitating the other side in its ability to continue to carry out operations? And on that front, the answer is no.
And Larry, let me show you a graphic here, because while he said that they're going down as we're going up, this is a chart of the daily strikes from the Iranian side in missiles and in drones. And you can see that on the first days of the war, they were pretty high. And then there was some truth to what Dan Kane said at one point, where he said they were like 90% down. But you see, that's on day 7 and 8, and they hit their nadir. Since that time, they have been popping back up. And you see, every day they have been launching more, concurrent with we're running lower on the interceptor missiles. But not that really matters that much, because the interceptor missiles themselves have a pretty low area of interception rate. Yeah. But what does that tell you about the Iranian resilience and about the statements coming out of the Pentagon?
Anybody that's been following the war between Russia and Ukraine and goes back to 2022, this is, as Yogi Berra said, deja vu all over again. We were, repeatedly being told in April, May, June, July, August of 2022, Russia's running out of missiles any day now. They're out. They're exhausted. They're out. Well, the same was being said about Iran. And again, the West, it's an intelligence failure. It's not really a failure. We can't see through rocks. Okay, they've buried their missile program underground, miles and miles and miles of tunnels, production facilities. So we really have no idea how many that they are producing, how many they have stored. What we do know is early on in this conflict, in this war, Iran used missiles that were 10, 15 years old. They're the older technology. Well, why did they do that? They were sucking up U.S. air defense. And, I've written 2 different articles on this. If we have not depleted our PAC-3 that goes on the Patriot and our THAAD missiles now, they'll be depleted by next week. I mean, we're not talking weeks of supply. We're literally talking days of supply, because the total production of THAADs is 900. So not in a year. That's from the time that Congress first allocated money for this production, 900. So when you figure you've got to fire 2 THAAD missiles to take out one ballistic missile, that means you got the ability to shoot 450 missiles. Iran has already shot about 1,000 missiles. Okay, so right there, if the THAAD was used to go after every one of those Iranian missiles, the THAAD would be depleted. Same with PAC-3. PAC-3's total production was, as of the end of December 2025, 4,620. And that's on the generous side. That's assuming we had the maximum production possible. The actual numbers could have been lower than that, but at least 1,000 have been used in Ukraine. And well, we don't know how many, maybe 1,000 were used last June. So from 4,620, you're already down, you've got 2,620 left. That means they're capable of engaging about 1,000 ballistic missiles. And we're done. I do know of one particular U.S. base in the Gulf region that they depleted their supply last Wednesday. I mean, they're out.
You say that categorically it's like two per one, but I mean we've seen a number of shots. Gary has shown. I don't know if you have any of them still handy from last week, where there was like just bam, bam, 1, 2, 3, 4 went up there, and none of them hit anything, and the missiles kept on coming. Yeah. So those seems like there's a lot more than that, even than what had happened.
Yeah, and it's not not revealing top secret information. I mean, they publish in the defense budget. They got line items and how much Lockheed Martin's going to, they can build X amount for X amount of dollars. It's just do the math. And that's what's so, I guess it's not shocking that the reporters, these so-called journalists, are a bunch of, lazy people. They're not doing the basic work to say, hey, let's ask questions. How many are being fired? And, they're out. And so that's one of the reasons now you see the uptick with the Iranian missiles, because they know they've depleted both U.S. and Israeli air defense systems. So now they can fire, and they're going to fire more sophisticated missiles that can cause more damage. So, the United States can't stop it because they keep saying, oh, well, we destroyed all these launchers. The more modern missiles that Iran has are being launched from underground silos that literally they pop out of the earth. And we say, oh, there's one. Well, it's like playing whack-a-mole. Well, we'll go hit that where it just came out of that hole. Well, it comes out of another hole. Well, we'll go get that one. And before coming on air, I think the Department of War, formerly known as DOD, confirmed that an F-35 was hit over Iran.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
I did not see that.
So it looks like an F-35 has now been shot down. So much for the suppression of enemy air defense, the SEAD portion. Again, I think the United States has been gaslighting the public on that because they've been doing standoff missions. So they're not actually over Iranian airspace. They're staying outside Iranian airspace, launching the JASSMs in. Not so much the JDAMs only have like a 50-mile ability, but yeah, there's an example of one of the missiles being just fired out of, you're looking at, it looks flat Earth. They don't have any visible outward signs that there's a missile there. There comes another one. So our satellites could, oh yeah, we know where that one was launched from. Well, okay. That means under that you got miles of underground facilities, and that's what. So Iran does. We say, oh, we destroyed Iran's navy. They didn't really have a navy. They've got a Coast Guard, lethal Coast Guard with small boats that we have not destroyed, accompanied by drones, maritime drones, and they haven't even begun to fight with those, and we don't really have a good defense against that. And then, well, we've destroyed their air force. They don't have an air force. They got a missile force.
Right.
So it's like we're fighting. We're all geared up to fight an enemy that's not there. We've come. We haven't come properly dressed for the activity. Is how I would put it.
And let me ask you. Speaking of activity, there was yesterday morning what looked to be a pretty substantial escalation started from Israel, that they attacked the North Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf, which angered Qatar and Iraq, because Iraq, even though they don't have control of that field, a lot of their electricity is generated from it, and it was actually cut off. Like 31,000 megawatt hours worth of power got cut offline, which is going to be a huge problem for Iraq. That's not an insignificant amount of generation. And then, of course, Iran promised that they would retaliate afterwards, which some reports had overnight that they did. What is that going to tell you about where this war is going?
Well, Iran has made it clear. They announced that this is total war. So they're not going to stop until America is forced out of the Persian Gulf. I mean, it's going to end one way or the other. We're going to have to destroy Iran, which I would argue is impossible. Impossible, and to maintain any shred of humanity, or we're gonna have to leave the area, and I think that's where it's headed. We're gonna have to leave the area. Iran can outlast us. Donald Trump cannot survive, and the Republicans cannot survive the economic stress that is being placed on the economy. Already, in the space of now going on the third week, the stock market, according to the Dow Jones, has lost 10% of its value. It went from over 50,000 to now it's 45,000, a little above. It's going to continue to drop. And I'm not giving financial advice here. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
At the same time, the price of gas, it keeps going up about 8 to 10 cents every 2 days, 2 or 3 days. So it's already in the course of these 3 weeks, it's now up $1 down here in Florida. And people are, so if you fill up your tank, if you got a 20-gallon tank, you're spending an extra $20 every time you go to the gas station. And if you fill up once a week, okay, that's and then do that for 52 weeks, okay, now you're talking $1,000. Well, for you and me, $1,000, okay, we'll suck it up. I'll smoke one less cigar a week or something, But for a lot of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and that $1,000 hurts.
Well, and then it's compounded though, because diesel is also going way up. I think diesel is expensive. It's been in years.
It's up $2.
$2. Okay, so every one of these trucks is going to Giant Foods or Publix or anything else, anything that's moving anything anywhere, the price of everything then goes up. So it's not just your cigars, but then also whatever you get when you go to the grocery store or go to your restaurant to buy food, everything is going to go up. And I don't see an end to this anytime soon. Do you?
Well, let me compliment you on your reference to both Giant, which is Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, and Publix, which is Florida. Well played, man. That's some skill there. That's high skill.
Was a difference to you. Tip of the hat.
Yeah, no, but you're right. This is now going to creep in to every facet of American life. So the inflation, we're going to be caught with. You can remember it. You were at least a teenager back then, but in the 70s,
very much
when we had stagflation. We had high inflation. It was a consequence of the Vietnam War, and the Israelis with the Yom Kippur War, and then the Arab oil embargo from OPEC, which lasted about 7 months, and that drove the price of oil up. Of course, price of oil back then was like $4 a barrel, and it went up to $12 a barrel. we look back and go, "Good
Those
God,
were the days."
I sound like my grandfather talking about the Depression. But now we're in a stage where we went from $60 a barrel to Brent is up around 120, and it's gonna continue to go up. We'll be lucky if it stops at just $200 a barrel. So then that reverberates throughout society and throughout the economy. And then we're only talking gas. What about the oil base, the gasoline?
Right.
Then what about liquid natural gas? Good God, that's now 25% of the world capacity is now gone with Qatar, and no telling how long it'll take Israel to get back online. So that as well is going to have a dramatic effect. Then top that with 35% of out of that natural gas is produced fertilizer, urea, that is forms nitrogen, and that's gone, which means they're already seeing prices as much as 25 to 50% price increase on fertilizer. This is the planting season up in the northern hemisphere, which we've got like 75% of the arable land in the world is in the northern hemisphere. If they don't have the fertilizer, that means food production is going to be down. So we're not just looking at immediate short-term effects. Man, we're looking at some long-term effects that are going to create massive global instability.
Okay, and let me piggyback off of that, because the urea and some of these other things from fertilizer are from natural gas. It's where a lot of them are derived from.
Right.
Back to this North Pars Fields that was attacked yesterday. President Trump had a really strange Truth Social last night, which on the first part of it looked like he was mad at Israel, because he says Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at the South Pars gas field. And he goes on to complain about that and says it's a bad idea and they better not do it again. But then it gets weird. He says no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar, in which instance the United States of America, with or without the help of or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field, an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed. Why in God's name would you threaten to blow up the field that is part owned by our ally Qatar, that our other ally Iraq needs for its gas, and that everybody needs for urea, etc.? Why would he threaten that? That is weird.
Well, he clearly doesn't understand, doesn't care to understand. But the underlying premise of that is it's a lie. We absolutely knew Israel was going to do it. We have it used to be at Al Udeid Air Force Base. It was called the Combined Air Operations Center, the KAOC.
Yeah, I spent some time in there, actually.
Okay, so I don't know if it's still up and running at Al Udeid because of its because the Al Udeid has been hit with multiple missiles and drones. I don't know if they've tried to relocate to Jordan or to some other location. But as you recall, in that KAOC, they're coordinating every air mission in the region. There's not a single plane that's taking off or landing without knowing where the hell it's going. And part of that is so that you deconflict. You make sure that, one of the old missions of the KAOC was to ensure that Russians and U.S. pilots and Russian pilots were not crossing paths and were not in the chance of getting into a confrontation. So the U.S. absolutely knew when Israel took off where it was going and what it was going to do. Absolutely knew. So Trump's lying on that part, but
Okay, well, that just makes it weirder. If why this claim, but then I know. I mean, would he do that? He's explain the whole thing to me because I don't get it.
Yeah, well, they're not thinking this through logically, because on the one hand, he does understand how devastating this is for the economy, the U.S. economy. Now, the United States is one of the few countries that is actually pretty well insulated, at least from a shortage of petroleum, because we produce a lot ourselves. But nonetheless, just because we produce a lot doesn't mean that we're going to still get the same cheap price, because when the shortage is out there, then the oil drillers who are not owned by the government, if they have a choice of selling to the United States at $60 a barrel or selling to, say, Brazil, who needs oil, at $90 a barrel, and you're a publicly traded company that is supposed to make a profit, where do you sell your oil? Yeah, it's going to Brazil. It's not coming to the United States, even though it was, brought out of the ground in the United States. So that's why this shortage, global shortage, is going to drive prices up here in the United States as well, significantly. And And so that, on the one hand, Trump is trying to prevent that. That's why they said, oh, remember all those sanctions on Russia? Never mind. Go ahead, sell as much as you want. Good for all, and they're even allowing Iran ships to come out with oil. They don't want to disrupt. They don't want any more disruption to the global oil supply. And Israel just said, screw it. We're going to take them out. Because Israel foolishly believes that, if it knocks that out for Iran, that Iran's done. Well, Iran turned around and went after the one oil refinery in Israel at Haifa. It's history. It's gone now. It hadn't been reported because the Israeli censors are keeping that down, but Iran took it out yesterday. So,
along keeping with the theme of President Trump doing things that don't make any sense right now, I think as we're speaking, he has I think it's the Japanese Prime Minister in the Oval Office. Just a minute ago, Gary alerted me that he said something about the situation here. Gary, go ahead and play that.
I thought it would be worse. Much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon. We've obliterated the Navy. We've obliterated just about everything there is to obliterate, including leadership. Their Navy's gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft equipment is gone. We're flying wherever we want, Pete. We have nobody even shooting at us.
I guess somebody forgot to do that F-35 pilot.
Hey, those weren't real bullets. Those are imaginary because Donald Trump said they don't exist. Yeah, I mean, he said up straw man. We destroyed their Navy. Well, they didn't really have a Navy. They didn't have aircraft carriers. They weren't a Navy. The actual, having aircraft carriers, battleship, destroyers, cruisers. We no longer have battleships. Was to project force in other countries, to project force internationally. That wasn't Iran. Iran wasn't going around trying to conquer the world. That was us. Ditto with the Air Force. It was designed, if it's designed for protecting domestic territory is one thing, but Iran's never really put a big emphasis on its Air Force. Yeah, it's got some planes, but it's that, it has not seen itself as we're going to have the number one fighter squadron in the world. No, they got the missiles. That's where they're punching back, and that's what Trump can't touch. So this is notice his lies, because last week he said that Iran was 100% defeated. Well, okay, then why are we asking the Europeans and Chinese for help? I mean, if they're defeated, hey, let's just walk right in, make ourselves at home, turn them into our slaves, make them, serve us our supper and give us a bath.
And one other interesting tell, I think, about what it is, Secretary Hegseth this morning in his comments said, hey, one other thing here, by the way, this is CBS, and they're talking about how some of the things you just said here, that the war is escalating and it's causing economic difficulties, pushing up oil and gas prices higher and causing problems. But then Hegseth also said, according to the Washington Post, that we're going to need another $200 billion supplemental for this war. Well, we've been chewing through, by summer accounts, about $2 billion a day. So we're at about 38, I guess, if that's an accurate number. And he's looking for 200. What does that tell you about how long we think this is going to go?
Several months. In fact, I think Iran has, I think, at least the capacity to go for a full 6 months with missile strikes, and maybe longer. And that's assuming, because they're launching a minimum of 3 waves of missile attacks per day. Now, they also at some point, as their rate of fire slows, it'll be slowing because they've run out of targets. That's the other thing. If once you've basically destroyed all the U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf, you don't need to keep firing at them, because they're done. They'll concentrate then on military targets in Israel, to the point that Israel will lose its ability to launch any more flights. And all of this is coming at a time when he decided to pick another fight with Hezbollah, who was defeated. Remember, they were wiped out.
Yeah.
And yesterday, Hezbollah reported knocked out 7 Merkava tanks in one day.
Oh wow! Didn't see that.
Yeah. So this is a repeat of 2006 when Israel invaded southern Lebanon, got its ass kicked. After 33 days, said, "Oh, okay, we'll have a ceasefire," and retreated. You're already. I was listening. Alistair Crook and his wife. Actually, his wife does all the work. Asling, she's a brilliant woman, and they read the Hebrew press because what is written in Hebrew is not published in English. Okay, they say 2 different things. You know, they'll talk about, oh, in English, oh yeah, man, things are going well, it's great, and then in Hebrew they're going, good God, we're in big trouble. What are we going to do? And Alistair reported yesterday that there has been a significant change in tone now in the Hebrew press, that they're backing away from their ultimate these maximum objectives that they initially had with respect to Iran, and now they say, okay, well, basically maybe we're going to have to figure out how to coexist with Iran. But I don't think this genie doesn't get put back in the bottle now. The martyrs of Iran, their blood will demand vengeance. And Israel is compounding its problem now because they've shut down access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Muslim countries around the world are now rising up and demanding that Israel open the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And Israel has closed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And for Christians who are not familiar with the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, that is claims to be built on the burial, on the site where Jesus was buried and resurrected. So it is the, if you will, the most holy.
Why have they closed those 2?
Security, they said. And they've closed it because they can. Because they are anti-Christian and anti-Muslim. That's what Israel is, you know. And what's disgraceful are all these Christian Zionists who claim, oh, we got to bless Israel. I mean, please.
It's not reciprocated.
Israel is it's in the process. It's committing suicide.
Yeah, and we're gonna touch on that here in a minute. I want to stick with the issue. One of the reasons why I think President Trump may be making statements like he just did, why he may be making things that he said in that Truth Social post last night, because he may believe it, because he may be being told that that's the truth. These are things that are real. And let me just give you one example of somebody who was President Trump's right-hand man. He was the Deputy National Security Advisor for the Vice President in Trump's first administration. He was Trump's hand-picked envoy to Ukraine during the Ukraine war, and that is General Keith Kellogg, who went on to Newsmax yesterday to explain how easy it is to open the Strait of Hormuz.
Do you think there is a way to make this strait passable here in the coming days?
It's passable now. They just have the courage to do it. I mean, they're taking a chance and they know they're going to run it. I think what they've done is they're kind of what we would call softening up the targets, primarily around the Strait of Hormuz, where you take the shore-to-ship missiles and any type of batteries out. And it's not only that choke point, which is near Bandar Abbas, but it's you up to Persian Gulf and Karg Island as well. If you take Karg Island and you can secure the Strait of Hormuz, then you're in great shape.
So, yeah, that's it, man. It's already open. You just have to have the guts, man. Just quit being a baby about it. Just go on through the Gulf right now. What do you say to that?
If a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump its ass when it jumps, okay? I mean, come on. This is... And America wonder, why haven't we won any wars since World War II? Because we got morons like this that were in command. You know, to say something so stupid. You know, we talked before coming on air about. I think it'd be a great idea. Strap him to the bow of the ship that's going to run the Strait of Hormuz. That way he'll be like Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, you know, out there on the front But you know, this,
because here's what he's saying. All you got to do is take Karg Island and these little islands right here in the horseshoe of the strait, and then bam, it's going to be good. And of course, I mean, the first question I got to ask is, I mean, aside from how are you going to take that? Are we going to get to Tripoli that's going to run the gauntlet in here and somehow it's going to get all the way up there and take the island, or fly helicopters in? We'll talk about that maybe separately, but whatever. Let's say that you have this and that you have these. What about all this territory? What about all the shore batteries and the missiles all throughout this depth here? Right. And actually, we have this. Let me pull this up real quick. Gary had something here we've shown several times, but it really plays into here. Look at these ranges here. So all these different categories of Iranian missiles. Note that every single one of them covers the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. So even if you took the shorelines, even if you took Karg Island, all this kind of stuff, none of that is going to have anything to do with protecting the Gulf from continued on support for that. So you're not going to get it. You're not going to get through. And yet he's talking there, just have courage. It's open now. Well, it's open if you're a Chinese ship. Yeah. It's open if you pay a fee, apparently, to the Iranian side. But if you're an American or an Israeli, it's not open.
Yeah, actually, I was being interviewed yesterday by a retired Russian general on the International Unity channel, and General Gurulov. And I commented, I said, you know, we got talking about Karg Island. And I said, oh, General, you realize Karg Island is Persian for Snake Island. And for those who don't know, Snake Island is an outcropping of rock in the Black Sea off the coast of Ukraine, off the coast of Russia. And it's completely exposed. And so early in the war, you know, the Ukrainians took it and said, yay. And then they were quickly pushed off by the Russians who took it, and the Russians were on board, yay. But then they started getting hit with, FPV drones and artillery fire, and they quickly because it was impossible to hold it. Well, that's Karg Island. You put troops there. Not only apart from the missiles, it's in range of artillery. So shore batteries can just, you know, shell the dickens out of it. And then you get the FPV drones, and it's not like they've got well constructed bunkers on Karg Island. They don't. So you're going to have all these American troops, and you said, you know, how do they get there? You know, that's the other mystery. You know, that they've managed to run the Strait of Hormuz without getting blown out of the water, or the alternative is, let's assemble them at Prince Sultan Air Base, except Prince Sultan Air Base no longer has an effective air defense, and any gathering of troops there is well within the target range of Iranian missiles and drones. So you get a group of 50 soldiers gathered, they're going to get hit before they even have a chance to get on a helicopter. Now, this is madness. The notion that we can do anything with ground forces that will not incur significant losses is just sheer fantasy.
Yeah, but that seems to be what we're doing. I'm sorry, I was looking for the map here that I had of Snake Island, but I think we're missed that. Sorry. There's one other thing I want to show you though too, because this is kind of evidence of it's not just the military, it's even some of the diplomatic guys here. And we had Brian Hook, who was on, I think it was Fox News, that's talking about how easy this is to solve, even militarily and diplomatically. So if the Gulf of Strait of Hormuz is easy to get, so is the war. Watch this.
I think Israel is doing to Iran what Israel did to Hamas and to Hezbollah. You know, President Assad from Syria is now in Moscow, and so many of the Iranian proxies have fled Iraq and Syria. And I think that same wartime strategy that they applied to those terrorist organizations, they're now applying it to the Iranian regime. They have had incredible success. They are decapitating the Iranian leadership. They did that to a degree during the 12-day war. And now in this conflict, they're going to have an even longer runway to, I think, address the people who are behind the government that is the world's strongest supporter of terrorism. We could have a post-conflict sort of scenario where the Iranian regime is largely at peace with its neighbors, not by choice, but because they have no other option, because they have been demilitarized.
So demilitarized. I mean, Russia's been trying to do that to Ukraine for, outset. That's one of their objectives here. They haven't been able to do it in 4 years here, but that's with I don't know, somewhere around 800,000 ground troops in addition to the air power. Can we, in 19 or so days, demilitarize Iran, a country that's 4 times bigger than Iraq?
I guess Mr. Hook is not reading the news. So let's start with Hamas. Hamas has an estimated force structure of about 30,000 fighters. They are enclosed in an area that's 5 miles wide, 25 miles long. Israel has them surrounded with 300,000 soldiers. Israel has fixed wing aircraft, combat aircraft. They have rotary wing aircraft. They have artillery. They have tanks. They have armored personnel carriers. They have every imaginable military advantage. And here we are now, 2.5 years since Israel started its offensive against Hamas. They haven't beat Hamas. So, yeah, they've killed a lot of Palestinians. Woohoo, killing civilians, big tough guys. They've been unable to defeat the Hamas fighters. Why? Because the Israelis are a bunch of chicken shit cowards is what they are. They don't want to risk going in and getting killed. So, they prefer to bomb the civilians and wipe out the infrastructure. Ditto for Hezbollah. Yeah, they've defeated Hezbollah. Really? Then who blew up those 7 Merkava tanks yesterday? In fact.
And why would you have gone at all? If they were defeated, why would you have even launched a ground incursion? I mean, that's obviously self-evident.
We saw 4 days ago, that Hezbollah fired a 4-hour rocket barrage into Israel that Israel couldn't stop. The David Sling didn't work. Iron Dome didn't work because they're running out of missiles.
Mm.
So, Captain Hook here is just, he's delusional. He doesn't understand the lay of the land, and the fact that Hezbollah is still a viable entity, as is Hamas, and that the United States we don't have a defined military strategy for defeating Iran. Because really, the only way you're going to defeat Iran is with a ground force. If we're willing to put together a 4 million man army, and just think of the cost involved with that, probably another $2 trillion that we don't have. We might be able to invade Iran and maybe overthrow the government. And I put a big maybe there, but at an enormous cost of life. So it's not like we have no alternative but to fight, because Iran didn't pick this. And again, they continue to repeat this lie that Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism. It is not. That is simply not true. I challenge any American, show me the last Iranian terrorist attack in the United States. And if they say, well, what about up in Michigan, that guy who's his brother was a Hezbollah commander that was killed. Yeah, okay. So one guy who's related to a Hezbollah commander gets pissed off at the Jews because they killed his brother. All right. You're calling that some massive terrorist campaign? Sorry. I put that on the personal vendetta level. I don't excuse it at all. Again, why go kill a bunch of Jewish congregates in Michigan? They had nothing to do with the death of his brother. And that's part of the cycle we need to stop, where people keep getting killed for the acts of others when they themselves had no responsibility or involvement. So stop killing the innocent on both sides.
Yeah, and when we focus so many times and so much on killing, especially Hegseth, he was talking about that a lot this morning at his press conference, and that just adds to the problem. I want to actually run back to something that happened yesterday because in a lot of things it was in the news about Joe Kent resigning his position as the deputy national director of national intelligence. And he specifically resigned because he said, you know what, there was no imminent threat, despite what the president said. And he said that the president was tricked into war by the Israelis and by the compliant American media. And he said he could no longer in good faith serve that. Well, as it turned out, the timing was pretty bad for his boss, Tulsi Gabbard, who was on the Hill yesterday and had a pretty rough time of it.
the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president
here's the problem.
based on a volume
no,
of
it is
information
precisely
that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing where, as you noted in your opening testimony, quote, you represent the IC's assessment of threats. You are here to represent the IC's assessment of threats. That's a quote from your own opening statement. And so my question is, as you're here to present the IC's assessment of threats, was it the assessment of the intelligence community that, as the White House claimed on March 1st, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
Once again, Senator, the intelligence community has provided the inputs that make up this annual threat assessment.
You won't answer the question.
It is the nature of the imminent threat that the president has to make that determination based on a collection and volume.
That's probably never there, Gary.
And
And you know what?
that he is
Prior
provided
to this, prior to that, the exchange right there, he had run through a series of yes or no questions, which she answered correctly. He said, according to your testimony, was the Iranian nuclear facilities obliterated in 2025? Yes or no? Yes. According to your testimony, have they attempted to rebuild that and to have new capacity? Yes or no? No. And then he said, okay, based on those things, was there an imminent threat? Well, obviously, based on your answer, it's a physical impossibility for there to have been 2 weeks away for a nuclear bomb, which of course is being shared by all the president's supporters on media and social media and elsewhere. And yet when pressed on it, she just couldn't answer the question. What did you make of that?
She's a disgrace. Look, the job of an intelligence analyst is to go through the intelligence, try to sort out the gold from the crap, figure out what is true, what is not true, to the best of your knowledge, best of your judgment. And then if you see a developing threat, to warn the president. And then it's the president's decision on what to do about that information. Tulsi is, like you, I once admired her. I thought she had some integrity. I thought she was intelligent, and now she's just turned out to be a pathetic political hack. Because it is the senator from Georgia, I believe that was who we were looking at, as he correctly noted, it is her job to tell the president whether or not the threat is imminent, it's developing, or it's not likely. It's like with respect to, does Iran have sleeper cells in the United States? Based upon, I don't have access to the current intelligence, but based upon my prior access, the answer to that is no. Because Iran's not going to start a fight here when they need to take out all of our forces. Killing civilians here, they know is simply going to enrage Americans and make them stick in the fight. Iran's goal is to sap our will, and one of the ways to sap that is cause military casualties over there and the military costs over there, so that the American people get fed up and say, no, we don't want to continue this. So, no. But here's Tulsi, as you correctly noted, said, well, they're not developing a nuke. It was, quote, obliterated, even though it wasn't. I mean, come on. We know that. But that Iran doesn't pose an imminent threat to attack us. And instead of her and she should have walked out the door with Joe Kent. Kent, who was the director of the Counterterrorism Center. Kent, among all other people in the U.S. government, is the one agency responsible for putting together all terrorist threat information. They're the ones that put together the statistics that are then subsequently published every year in country reports on terrorism. So, I said, what a disgrace.
Yeah, it was just very disappointing because, you could tell she just didn't want us to contradict President Trump, because it appeared to me that she's just like saying, no, I got to hang on to my job, because if I answer the third question, the obvious answer was no, there was no imminent threat. How could there be? The physical capacity for that didn't exist. Instead, she just tried to say, well, no, that's his call to make. And it's just very disappointing.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, we continue to peddle a lie about Iran. Again, come back. Show me the one terrorist attack that Iran, and don't say, well, some proxy, but that Iran itself has organized and carried out a terrorist attack. We can show you lots that the Americans have done inside Iran. I mean, if not direct support for the MEK, which has carried out multiple terrorist attacks and assassinations inside Iran. I mean, the United States doesn't even hide the fact that it funds it.
And by the way, let me ask you a question, because I saw yesterday on social media, I don't have it. Unfortunately, I didn't set it aside. But because of Israel's basic unrestricted warfare, and they're now assassinating everybody, and they're trying to destroy the organs of state. They are at war with Iran, of course, but they were showing an overhead drone shot of a policeman at a checkpoint in the city where he was directing traffic, and they had a missile going and blow the guy up, and they just showed it straight up on there. As I understand, that's a war crime, because that's not a combatant. That's just somebody who's serving civil police function to keep the state functioning on the inside. Is that a legitimate target?
No, it's not a legitimate target, but let's be honest about it. The United States has a long history of doing that. Go back to World War II and our bombing of civilian areas in Germany and in Japan. We killed in Japan from 1st of March of 1945 through August 9th with the dropping of the bomb in Nagasaki. We killed over 700,000 Japanese civilians. 100,000 of them were roasted in a fire that started by our bombers in Tokyo back in March. More than 100,000. So, and this has been one of the problems that I have with the Air Force. They can drop bombs from 25,000 feet. They don't see the burning flesh, the mangled bodies. They don't have to look in anybody's eyes. It's just, it's an explosion on the ground. They never, rarely are they have to confront the human cost. Whereas, people like yourself on the ground, you smell the burning flesh.
Yes.
And it affects, this is why there's a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome out of soldiers that encounter those kinds of horrors. The human psyche is not meant up to absorb that kind of massacre. Well, so we've got it very accustomed to killing civilians from the air. So, when they try to make it about the little schoolgirls, we have to discredit that as much as possible. Because if you got the pilots really thinking about the fact you've killed children that are the same age as your children, you have to live with that. And at some point, the conscience of some of these men kicks in.
Yeah, and the problem is some of the senior leaders who gave the orders don't seem to be suffering from that. By the way, we just have this breaking news here related to what you had talked about a minute ago, that the F-35 is now publicly being acknowledged that it had made an emergency landing, so it didn't actually knock it down. So apparently the pilot got home there. And according to the article, Captain Hawkins spoke to the U.S. CENTCAN, said that the fifth-gen fighter was flying a combat mission over Iran when it was forced to make an emergency landing, and the investigation is under fire. So it was hit by enemy fire over Iran, which would seem to imply that we don't have the complete mastery of the sky that we keep claiming.
Well, yeah. Where did he make the emergency landing? I don't believe a damn thing our government reports. Maybe the plane crashed in Iran, and they had a CSAR, a combat search and rescue team that got on, was able to get across the border, rescue the pilot, and get out. That's possible. But
it doesn't actually say where he made the emergency landing.
Emergency landing, it's not like there are lots of airfields to choose from. It's not like, we got hit over Long Island, so are we going to land at LaGuardia or JFK or Newark or, it's not like you got a multitude of airstrips there to choose from. So again, this is, The nearest airfields are, Doha in Qatar. We got Al Udeid Air Force Base. You got the base in Dubai, or the international airport in Dubai. You've got a base in Bahrain. You've got an airfield in Kuwait, but they've been damaged.
Yeah.
How about
one of the questions I want to ask you is what the potential ramifications of this are. I remember, I think it was the very first press conference with the Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, made a point of describing in detail. He said, we had started in the first few days of this with the standoff weapons, the Tomahawks, and I think the JASSMs and some of these other categories. But he said, now we're doing stand in because we have obliterated their air defenses and we're able to fly in. Well, I got it from another source yesterday who has colleagues, will say, in the region, and they said that when they're looking at the bombers going up, they still see all standoff weapons, ones that have like over 400 miles of range, etc. And now that you see, if you're trying to fire stand in, which this F-35 potentially was because it's over Iran, it's getting shot. Well, what is that going to do to our inventory of the standoff if we're still using them a lot?
Yeah, no, we're running low on those now. I think we had a pretty large supply of JASSMs, so we're not in a critical level. Unlike what's going on with the PAC-3s on the Patriots or the THAAD missiles, those are exhausted or at the point of exhaustion. And when I'm saying the point of exhaustion, I doubt we have enough inventory to last another week if Iran continues to launch 30 to 40 ballistic missiles per day. So, we're going to be out on that front. But
okay. So I'm sorry, but that begs another question. Let's just, and I'm not talking about the likelihood of this is not even relevant, but in the event that a Pearl Harbor type attack comes out of nowhere and for whatever reason, just pick it, China decides that they do something that hits us in the Asia Pacific somewhere. I won't even say that we're going to war over Taiwan, but maybe it was, doesn't matter. But for any reason, we're now in a fight with the superpower of China, or God forbid something weird happens in Europe and we get fighting actually Russian forces, and now then we're in a fight against them. What are we going to do for air defense if we're almost out of the PAC-3s right now?
Yeah, right now the estimate. So Indo-PACOM had 3 batteries or 3 battalions of Patriot batteries. So a Patriot battalion consists of 4 to 6 batteries, actual launchers. So if we go on the low side, 4 launchers, and they come either with 72 or 96. So, let's just make it easy, 80 and 100 to round it up. So if they got 100 and you got 4 batteries, that means you got 400 missiles. Whereas if you've got, or you got 320 missiles. So somewhere in the range between 320 and 400 PAC-4s. That's if you got 4 batteries. If you got 6 batteries, that takes you to 480 or 600. 600 battery, let's go with the 600. That's you can then shoot down potentially 300 Chinese missiles. Do you think the Chinese have a few more than 300 missiles? We'll be done in 2 or 3 days. Then we're out.
And we've been seeing, at least so far,
we're
it's
out.
between 5 and 10% success rate of those that are fired.
Right. Yeah, and so then we're out, and it's not like, flip the switch and crank out another 100. We're only producing on the PAC-3s around 50 per month. Okay, 600 a year. They got 620. Let's say maybe we can get it up to 700 a year. That gives you the ability to take out 350 missiles. What we have seen, what's one of the characteristics now of war in the 21st century that we've seen on the battlefield in Ukraine is Russia, in the course of the last 4 years, 1 month, have fired over 12,000 missiles. And our capability is to produce an air defense system that can take out 350.
Yeah, that see to me
Yeah.
that is the one of the most egregious failures of our command and our senior political leaders. They are obliterating our potential to defend ourselves, which was already limited by myopically focusing on this war that never should have been fought and doesn't benefit us at all, and it's coming at great potential cost elsewhere. Our national security has been weakened because of this.
Yeah,
and that's already.
Now, the United States has always predicted that China is going to invade Taiwan. Well, I don't think the Chinese will do that. I think the Chinese will win it the old-fashioned way through diplomacy and economic pressure. At some point, the Taiwanese will realize that, the United States is no longer a viable partner. They may have gotten married to us, but all of a sudden they realize we're a chronic alcoholic, a drug abuser, and violent at home. So we're not pleasant to live with.
Right. Yeah.